What's up, wrestling fans? I'm here to give you guys a theory, a storyline that I made up myself involving John Cena and whether or not he can turn heel at WrestleMania 29. I'm not saying a John Cena heel turn is going to be official for WrestleMania 29 or that I'm saying it's 100% guaranteed going to happen, but this is just my suggestion. This is something I've come up with, something that I would like to see of my own creation. Alright, and if you've seen the SmackDown spoilers for this Friday, I believe it's the March 29th edition of Friday Night SmackDown, yeah. John Laurinaitis makes his return to the WWE. I don't know if it's just for one night or whatever, or if he's actually making a return, but John Laurinaitis, he interrupted The Rock's promo on SmackDown saying that he would love to be in The Rock's corner for WrestleMania so that he could witness The Rock defeating John Cena. So this way, John Laurinaitis could get his revenge and retribution against John Cena for Cena being the man originally to get Laurinaitis fired last year and not be the general manager of Raw and SmackDown anymore. Well, basically, John Laurinaitis is going to have a lot to do with what I'm going to talk about, my little storyline here that I've come up with. So, guys, I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you like it. Here we go. The night after WrestleMania 28, it was the era of people power that was born, as John Laurinaitis liked to call it. The show opened up with John Laurinaitis having all of his superstars sitting in a room, and he was basically introducing them to a new era of how he's now in charge. Alright? Later on in that night, we had Brock Lesnar make his return to the WWE and F5 John Cena. This all happened on the same night. The night prior to that, John Cena had lost his match to The Rock. Alright? You guys know where I'm going with this so far. So, then, Brock Lesnar, he was making all these demands to have a bigger contract, to basically have Raw be called Monday Night Raw starring Brock Lesnar. You know what I mean? Like, he wanted to be bigger than WWE. He wanted to be the face of WWE. John Laurinaitis was going to wish, or John Laurinaitis was going to grant Brock Lesnar these demands until Triple H came and stopped him. And ultimately, this led to Brock Lesnar, kayfabe-wise, breaking Triple H's arm. And because of John Laurinaitis' actions of wanting to do all of this with Brock Lesnar, it led to a feud between John Cena and John Laurinaitis. And we all know how that ended. Laurinaitis got fired by Mr. McMahon. So then, we get this. The Shield makes their debut in the WWE the night of Survivor Series last year. They attack both John Cena and Ryback, and everybody automatically assumed that they were going to be working for CM Punk and Paul Heyman at the time, that Paul Heyman was the genius behind all of this, and they were working with CM Punk. They were going to be involved in a faction with CM Punk. The next night on Raw, when Michael Cole sat them down in an interview to talk about why they were here and why did they do that, the Shield basically said that they are a shield of justice. They're going to block the WWE from injustice. And that if it was Ryback who was the champion for 365 days, they would have intervened on his behalf as well. And it wasn't about benefiting CM Punk. It was about righting wrongs. And that the WWE Universe is a popularity contest, that ultimately the general managers have to answer to the board of directors, and the board of directors have to answer to the WWE Universe. Now, if you took note of what I said earlier, John Laurinaitis was the Raw general manager. He ultimately had to answer to Triple H, the COO, from the board of directors. Triple H was a part of that, the board of directors. Triple H's job was to try and give us what we wanted, give us the WWE Universe what we wanted. So, Laurinaitis, who has to answer to Triple H, did not like the fact that Laurinaitis was bringing in Brock Lesnar to do all of these demands, so to speak. Because if you remember, Laurinaitis was the man who actually re-signed Brock Lesnar, kayfabe-wise, and brought him back to the WWE. So if you think about it, what the Shield has said so far relates to John Laurinaitis. I think you guys know where I'm going with this, but keep on listening. John Laurinaitis was the original instigator between the feud of Triple H and Brock Lesnar. He's the one who got it started. Because the night that Triple H tried to stop John Laurinaitis from kissing Brock Lesnar's ass, Brock Lesnar attacked Triple H from behind, and that's how this whole feud between them started. And then that's when Paul Heyman got involved, and this and that. But Laurinaitis was the original instigator. People power, remember that, people power, because that's going to play a huge role into what I'm going to say later on. So anyway, we go back to the Shield. You know, they're attacking guys like Randy Orton, guys like Sheamus, guys like Ryback, and John Cena for the next couple of months. Then, the night after the Royal Rumble, Vince McMahon calls out Paul Heyman on Raw, and he basically reveals footage of Paul Heyman working with the Shield, saying that he was behind the Shield, as Paul Heyman paid the Shield to attack The Rock at the Royal Rumble, and that they've been paying the Shield all these months to do jobs for CM Punk. But before Vince McMahon could fire Paul Heyman for that, Brock Lesnar comes out and he F5s Mr. McMahon. Who was the man that fired John Laurinaitis? Mr. McMahon. Who was the man that attacked Mr. McMahon's son-in-law? Brock Lesnar. Do you guys see the pattern here? Brock Lesnar, who was brought back to the WWE by John Laurinaitis, attacked Mr. McMahon, who was the man that fired John Laurinaitis, who was the man that did Brock Lesnar those favors of these demands that he originally wanted. Then we get to Shield cutting a promo about how John Cena is the problem of the WWE, that he's the one that has made the WWE Universe buy into this crap that the system promotes. That he's the one who's got it all started. He's basically the product of the system, and how he's the problem. He's been the problem for the last decade. And this was the promo they cut right before the Elimination Chamber when they were going to face John Cena, Ryback, and Sheamus. And they also called him a failure. I believe Seth Rollins was the one who said, "You fail every time you get up in the morning and exist." And then Dean Ambrose continued with those lines as well. And what has John Cena been calling himself lately? A failure. A man who wants redemption against The Rock. And that Rock has never been able to experience failure in his life. And this past Monday on Raw, John Cena said he wants to hand The Rock a loss so devastating that it'll haunt him for the rest of his life. Remember, John Cena said these words. And he also said that ever since he lost to The Rock, his last year has been completely shit, you know, storyline-wise. He's lost a lot of big matches, you know. He was the first man to ever cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase and fail at becoming champion by cashing it in. He had a divorce with his wife. He lost to John Laurinaitis. You know, I guess you could say AJ Lee turned her back on him. All this other shit. Basically, it was a down year for John Cena ever since he lost to The Rock. And the fans still don't appreciate John Cena for everything he's done in his career. Maybe that's that's another part of why John Cena wants redemption against The Rock. So basically what I'm trying to get at is this. John Cena is going to beat The Rock at WrestleMania 29 for the WWE Championship. But the question is, how is he going to win? Remember, he said he wants to do whatever it takes to beat The Rock this year, and he's not going to make the same mistake he did last year, that he admitted he beat himself, and it wasn't The Rock who defeated him. And those were heelish words from John Cena. So the question now is, how is he going to win? You know, that's what everybody wants to know. How is he going to get his redemption? He's so obsessed with defeating The Rock now. Well, there's the Shield. There's John Laurinaitis. John Laurinaitis wants redemption as well against John Cena. And even though I'm trying to say Cena's turning heel, how would it make sense for him and Laurinaitis to team up? Well, that's what I'm going to get to now. John Laurinaitis could ultimately make up with John Cena. You know, they could talk about how they both want power in the company again, how they want to rule the WWE again. They're so ambitious. they're so delusional about taking over the WWE. They're so obsessive about the fact that they want redemption. They want redemption on someone. They want to take their frustrations out on someone. Cena's going to take his frustrations out on The Rock. And the other big match, Brock Lesnar versus Triple H, Triple H's career is on the line because of Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. So Brock Lesnar could defeat Triple H at WrestleMania 29 and Triple H's career, and then that could be John Laurinaitis' revenge. Because if you remember, Laurinaitis and Triple H had a little feud going as well. Even though it didn't lead to a match between the two, they still have some personal beef with each other. So that could be Laurinaitis' redemption. You know what else could be Laurinaitis' revenge? The fact that Brock Lesnar F5 Mr. McMahon, like I said a few moments ago. So basically what I'm saying is Laurinaitis gets his revenge on Triple H and Mr. McMahon after all the things they did to him last year for humiliating him and embarrassing him. He gets his revenge on that. He gets control back of the company the night after WrestleMania. He becomes the COO or the general manager or whatever the fuck you want to call him. And John Cena becomes the WWE champion. They both form an alliance to be a corporate faction or whatever. They both are heels. And then the Shield, maybe that could be the justice they were talking about all along. Maybe that could be their justice. And maybe the John Cena problem was the fact that he was a babyface all these years. Nobody was appreciating him for being a babyface. He's been booed so much. Maybe his shtick was getting old, so the Shield got tired of it. They wanted to change him, change John Cena, give him a new persona, give him a new product. And maybe this is it. Maybe this was a plan for John Laurinaitis and the Shield all along. Maybe they knew that if they used John Cena, they could get what they want out of him. So maybe, maybe it's a thing where they're, I'm not going to say manipulating, but it's a thing where they used all these other people to get what they wanted, and John Cena's going to be a part of that. So, yeah, guys, that's basically what I've come up with. Let me know what you guys think. It makes sense. I'm not saying it's going to happen, and if it does happen, I would be shocked because that requires a lot of thinking and a lot of going back to the past to see everything that happened. It requires a lot of thinking, like I said, a lot of math and whatever. I know it's probably too hard for WWE Creative to think because they have they have no brain at all. But yeah, guys, that's basically what I've come up with. And I know you're wondering, well, if John Cena turned heel, who would be the babyface now for the WWE? Look at it like this: you don't need another babyface to replace John Cena, because if you look at WCW, when Hulk Hogan turned heel, people were still watching to see him, even if he was a heel. Ratings were going off. They were off the charts in WCW when there was the NWO, and they were all bad guys, heels. So people are still going to want to pay to see John Cena. They're still going to buy his merch. The kids may not buy his merch, but they are going to watch him. They're going to pay to see him. And the adults, they're probably going to buy John Cena's merch now since he's going to be a bad guy. People are still going to want to pay and see John Cena. So ultimately, he's still going to be a top draw. Just as big of a top draw as he was as a good guy, he's still going to be as good of a draw as a bad guy as well, if that makes sense. You don't really need a top babyface to replace him. All you need is a temporary guy for the moment to feud with John Cena, to invest into making more money, invest the fans into wanting to watch this stuff. And with CM Punk set to take a break after WrestleMania 29, I don't know if that's confirmed yet. It's a rumor right now, but it is possible. CM Punk could return a few months down the road, come back as a babyface, and have his feud with John Cena, who would be a heel. And that would be the money-making match that would work for the WWE to get ratings, high ratings. They could do it during the summer, late spring, maybe even the fall. Who knows? But this could work, guys. It'd be a situation like when Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin switched their roles, and one of them became the good guy and the other became the bad guy. When Brock Lesnar and Austin had their match, everybody was cheering for Austin, and Austin was the heel. And a lot of people were booing Bret Hart. So they switched roles. Bret Hart turned heel, and Stone Cold Steve Austin turned babyface. Well, not a babyface, but he was someone that the fans wanted to cheer for, so they turned him into this badass type good guy that went up against authority and shit like that. And that's the role CM Punk could play. He could basically be the Austin in this situation all over again, and John Cena could be the Bret Hart in this situation all over again. I don't know if it would be a permanent move or a temporary move. You guys could be the judge on that, but this could also be a way to make CM Punk relevant again. I'm not saying he's not relevant, but make him more relevant. And it could build him up towards his big match, rumored match for WrestleMania 30 next year against Stone Cold Steve Austin. You could build him up as a top guy by being a good guy. So then by the time WrestleMania 30 rolls around, he's credible enough to the point where you're going to want to see him in a match against Stone Cold Steve Austin so it could draw money. But yeah, guys, basically that's the whole angle I've come up with. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's my own little dream scenario. I think it would make a lot of sense. And it'd basically be repeating history, because if you go back to WrestleMania 17, when The Rock and Austin had their match, Mr. McMahon came out and he did the unexpected. What did he do? He formed an alliance with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin turned heel that night, and he sold his soul to the devil and Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And at that time, nobody thought that would ever happen, because Austin and McMahon were feuding for years. They were arch enemies. They were the top rivals in the Attitude Era. Nobody ever thought, oh, they would form an alliance, because that wouldn't make sense. But they did it, and it made sense, and they formed an alliance. And WWE is capable of anything. Never say never when it comes to WWE. So, just like everyone thought that Austin turning heel and becoming an alliance with Mr. McMahon didn't make any sense and it would never happen, I think John Cena could turn heel, and nobody's saying that will happen. Everybody thinks that wouldn't make sense. It's basically history repeating itself, guys. It can happen. John Cena can sell his soul to the devil with John Laurinaitis. John Cena and John Laurinaitis had a feud, but that doesn't mean they can't form an alliance. Mr. McMahon and Austin had their feud, but they still formed an alliance. So again, John Cena, he can turn heel, guys. Just keep that in mind. I'm not saying he needs to turn heel. It's just my own little dream scenario, and it is possible, guys. Just keep that in mind. Just like Mr. McMahon and Austin forming an alliance became possible and nobody saw that happening, John Cena and John Laurinaitis is just as possible, even though it wouldn't make sense. It would make sense at the end of the day, because they can make up and basically become bad guys. So that's it, guys. Peace out.